Today, and to everyone who is visiting our service from home. We Unitarians of Lake Norman are an open and inclusive congregation. Our members walk very diverse paths to find meaning and purpose, but we're united by our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all, and by the responsibility to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. My name is Sandy McFeely, and I've been an active member of this congregation since 2013. Our musician today is Teresa Woody, and we are grateful to her for sharing her talents. Our speaker today is our minister, Reverend Pat Jobe, who has been with this congregation nonstop since August of 2020. He will help us find our place in the history of the Enlightenment, when exuberantly thinking philosophers, politicians, and writers shared all the wild thoughts they could come up with about the rightful place of men, and women if they had thought about it, in this world. We start our services and many other activities by lighting a candle inside a chalice and speaking words that call us to that occasion. Please join me in saying today's chalice lighting words. They're in your order of service, and probably for many of you, they're right up here. We light this flaming chalice to illuminate the world we see. In our search for truth, may we be just. In our search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace. I think we're ready for the opening words.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Before I give opening words, I want everybody to raise their hand. Everybody raise your hand. Okay, now, put your hand down if you don't know that we're not meeting in July. Okay. Gio, you didn't know.
I probably heard that. Yeah. Do it at one time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew. Also, I have a copy of A Chosen Faith, which is a primer on Unitarian Universalism. And I know many of you are new. And if you'd like to learn more, I'll be glad to lend you my copy. Anybody want to take this home with them? All right, Pamela, you win the prize. Thank you. Okay. Our opening words come from Satchel Paige. He said, "What's scary in life is not what people know or don't know. It's what people know that ain't so." We need to dim the lights for that one.
We need a dance floor.
Yeah, we do. We do. This reflection is full of stuff we already know, but we don't think much about it. In fact, we think so little about it that we sometimes shrug and say, so what? At a recent after-service meal, my brother Greg Davis reflected on the problem of the history of stuff that happened before today's young people were born. Think about that. Before today's young people were born. The women's movement, the civil rights movement, and the anti-war efforts that opposed the Vietnam War, all that to so many young people is just back there. It's history. It's history. So what? So what if there was a time when a woman could not borrow money in her own name? What if there was a time when women could not own property or testify against their husbands in court? I have now turned 2 pages when I meant to turn 1. There was a time when Black people could not get served in restaurants or buy a home in certain neighborhoods or qualify for a mortgage or the best jobs. So what? So what? All of that is history. And why should we pay any attention to it today? Why should we pay attention to history when we have enough problems finding a decent place to live and earning a decent salary? The prophetic voices of ancient religions told us all people are of equal value and should, at the very least, be entitled to equal opportunity and equal protection under the law. But the priests and preachers of most religions said all that was saved for life after death. The poor were expected to literally bet their lives on pie in the sky in the sweet by and by. That's the way Woody Guthrie sang about it. The poor were expected to work the fields that fed the rich and serve in the armies that protected the rich. The idea that a poor field hand or soldier was equal to the lord of the manor was a ridiculous idea. The lower classes were disposable and virtually subhuman in the eyes of the power structure. And then John Locke came along. John Locke was a writer and a doctor. And he saw the fallacy in this way of looking at his fellow human beings, especially those who were in the Catholic Church. And he wrote a letter called A Letter on Tolerance, in which he basically affirmed the rights of all human beings. He couched it in terms to say that the Church of England was wrong to demonize the Roman Catholics. This came on the heel of the Reformation, in which 10 million people died. He floated the idea that all men are created equal. 100 years later, Thomas Jefferson would bring that idea into our own Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. But remember, please don't forget, that document clearly stated that all men did not mean all women. It did not mean all Black men. It did not even mean the field hands and soldiers who did not own land. When this country was founded, only landed, free, white men had the right to vote. And in so many ways beyond voting, only free white men amounted to anything. Imagine a carriage pulling up to a southern plantation or a northern home on Beacon Hill in Boston. The man who steps out of that carriage and the man who greets him, the person who lives in that house, is surrounded, literally surrounded by people who don't amount to a hill of beans in the opinion of the two men who are greeting each other. The maid, the cooks, the butler, all those who stand nearby are of such insignificance as to stagger our imaginations. We just can't think this way. They don't matter. They don't count for anything, hardly at all. They're easily replaced by others who will do their jobs. They are almost disposable. And of course, in times of war, they are disposable. The inherent worth and dignity of all was a slow roll through John Locke, through Thomas Jefferson, and into Andrew Jackson's campaign for president. Jackson promised that anyone who was free, white, and 21 should have the right to vote. That is kind of funny, isn't it? Free, white, and 21. But then came the Civil War to end slavery, to women winning the right to vote, a scant 55 years later in 1920, and then in the 1980s being extended full right to own their own credit cards. Inhumanity through labor, through the prison system, through poor housing, poor health care, poor schools, all of it continues into today's world. But at least we have the legacy of Locke, Jefferson, other of the founding parents, Lincoln, Susan B. Anthony, and tens of thousands of Unitarians who have always been on the right side of history. Unitarians have simply seen the inherent worth and dignity of all as long as there were Unitarians, early in the 1800s, right up to today. The wide divide between pie in the sky religion and the basic rights of all people is illustrated early on in the idealism of Emerson, Thoreau, Louisa May Alcott, Elizabeth Peabody, and all that crowd. They literally sat around in their parlors and talked openly and passionately about a time to come when slaves would be free, women could vote, own property, and expect to be treated with respect. And their religion was not pie in the sky. It was Unitarianism. The wild idea that even Jesus was a leader invested in dignity for all. We even get to claim Henry Bergh, who founded the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Bergh spent years working to end cockfighting, dog fighting, and other acts of cruelty to animals. As a good Unitarian, he also worked against child abuse. Now, depending on what happens with her daughter-in-law, Claudia and Alan are in Durham today with their daughter-in-law, who is not conscious in the ICU unit in the hospital. Depending on what happens with her, Claudia will be back next week and she will lead a children's class on animals. But that may not happen. Keep your ear to the ground. Be sure to read the newsletter. But if Claudia does make it back, bring any children, grandchildren, or neighbor children you can seatbelt into your cars. Within all great social and political movements is the inherent worth and dignity of all. It is so hard to imagine that carriage in front of that plantation house and not realize that inherent worth and dignity were simply out of the question. That driver, that maid, that field hand, they may not have been treated by the lords of the manor badly, but they were very easily ignored, not valued, certainly not regarded as anything more than disposable. They could be replaced. They were certainly never seated at the table. How different is the energy in this room right this second? How different is the energy that had Pamela Engelbert stand up at Joys and Sorrows and say to us that we have brought joy into her life? How different is it to realize that Lynn Henderson has been with us for the whole 14 years of our congregational history and now works hard to lead us as our congregation's president. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you so much. How different it is to have Katie Nettles stand up when she was a first-time visitor and talk back to us about the subject of the sermon. I begged them to come today. I don't know where they are. Unitarian Universalism has always been about the inherent worth and dignity of each individual. We might have taken that carriage ride to that plantation, but if we had, we would have been deferential to every human being we came in contact with. We would not have snubbed them and assumed our superiority. And if we got the opportunity, we would talk about the abolition of slavery and giving women the right to vote. That's who we were then. That's who we are now. And as we insisted on all that inherent worth and dignity through most of American history, we would have been considered radicals paddling against the current. We even have a man running for governor of North Carolina right now who says women should never have been given the right to vote. And the man running against him's name is Josh Stein. The man running against him. Josh Stein. Yes, Josh Stein, our wonderful, highly qualified Attorney General. While I personally remain a believer in life after death and the various realities reflected in that belief, I will never insist that anybody else embrace my beliefs about that or anything else. But there is no doubt that the prophets were sidelined by the power structure. In the feudal economies of the ancient world, it was simply impossible to honor all as equals. All the field hands, all the cooks, all the soldiers who were needed to maintain the power structure. They were not the equals of the feudal lords. Jesus may have said, treat other people the way you want to be treated. But the power structure needed people who could be treated as disposable by their feudal lords. Buddha may have offered an eightfold path to justice and equality in ancient Asia, but his own family needed soldiers to fight and die so the king could stay back home in his palace. The prophets of the ancient world were always marginalized by the needs of the power structure. We might even have a little bit of that left today. The changes that have come about in the past 300 years are truly inspiring and awe-striking. The fact that so many Unitarians risked life and limb to support these great changes is also inspiring and awesome. We are their descendants. We walk in the paths that they could. Now, when I spoke about money and charity a few weeks ago, we got some great answers to that question of what is left to be done. Natalie Hellig pointed out the limits of charitable giving and the need for government action to benefit the general welfare. Jim Price added the desperate need for universal health care. And even though neither one of them is here today, I'm going to say it anyway. Way to go, Natalie. Way to go, Jim. So now let's talk about it. Come on, Sandy. Lead us in a talk back.
I don't know if I can handle this rowdy crowd. This is the best time. You get to say, Pat, you are wrong. And then tell us what you think instead.
Which direction do you think we're moving now? And it continues.
Oh, it's scary. It is so scary. I mean, literally, the fact that Mark Robinson could be nominated by the Republican Party in North Carolina is just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And then I understand the Republicans are thinking about nominating another crazy man for president. So it is such a strange time we are living through. It really is. Now, when we get to the announcements, you're going to hear what the the vote crowd is planning to do about that, but we're not there yet.
Do I need to come up here?
Yeah, come up here because the people at home can't hear you.
Okay. A couple of years ago, I was in Asheville, and a friend and I were talking about population control.
Right.
And this guy that was sitting further from her away came up and said, We don't need that. We can't have that because we need the workers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't really understand what he meant, but it didn't sound good.
No.
So
We need people paying Social Security taxes. Even people who come on, Linda.
I was just gonna say, but then they don't want immigrants as the workers.
Right. They don't want immigrants. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. They want babies.
They want babies, they don't
Yeah. They want babies who'll be in the workforce 14 years from now. Yeah. Come on, Greg.
When we talk about the they that don't want immigrants or want babies, it's the they that want that weak employment class, undereducated, that they can make work for lower wages. So that discrepancy is what works best for corporate America because it can lower wages. And that's that whole power structure, economics, all about the money. So,
Just like
Vouchers will help
Allison.
educate.
yes.
Vouchers will help educate. Yeah.
Exactly. Privatize, get rid of this social structure, public education, where it is the melting pot of all Americans. Look at any classroom, just about anywhere, even with all the discrimination and everything else, but it is where everybody comes together and gets kind of socialized. But it was socialized towards fitting into employment, right? We all had to get that education so that we could get that job, go through this program so that we could fit the employment mold. And now it's all about keeping the wages down so that people will fight for jobs.
Many of us were lucky enough to be born and grow up in the 20th century, when the goal of having a great middle class was supported with social policies, with legislation, with all kinds of stuff. And as Greg described, it's all being ripped away now. We don't want people to have good health care. We want them to get sick and die off and just go away. We'll have more babies to replace them. And I hear a lot of people at my advanced age saying, I'm so glad I'm not going to live to see all this. It's just, I'm really glad, but it's awful thinking about children and grandchildren who are going to live to see all of whatever this turns out to be.
Come on, Loretta. Come up here, Loretta, because this is where the people at home can see you and hear you.
We need to see the people at home. Yes. I have a lot, as probably you do, Republican friends and people who think the same, not the same as I do. And so I've noticed that in the organizations that I belong to, we're reluctant to talk about our differences. So one of the people that I care about a lot, I had a real good relationship with. So I said, can we talk about this? And so he saw me in the parking lot at the grocery store before we had a chance to have a formal discussion. And we started talking about this, about our differences. And I said to him, how can you vote for the person he's going to vote for? What in the world makes you think that? So then he went off on the person that I'm going to vote for and was telling me all these terrible things. So when I got home, I thought about it and I sent him a text and said, where do you get your information? Because he was telling me all these things about the Biden administration and the situations they're in. And I thought, where does he get that? And so he wrote me back and said, that from the people that he talks to. So I sent a list to him of the people, the TV stations, the radio programs that I listen to, and the books that I read. And he wrote back and said that he didn't have time to do that. So my question to life is, how do you get someone to listen when they don't want to hear at all? So I'm just sharing my frustration with you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's a great question. It's a great question.
Folks that only listen to Fox News, they probably don't even know that Fox News was fined $750 million for feeding false information to the public. And the CEO at the day, while he was in court after putting his hand on the Bible, said, "We're not a news station, we're an entertainment station." But they still believe him. What I want to know is, in years to come, when we have hundreds of thousands of unwanted children, who's going to take care of them, love them, educate them? Because forced pregnancies on folks that do not want the children. Somebody in Congress or the Senate needs to propose a bill to start building the establishments to take care of all those children.
Foster care system is already completely overwhelmed and unable to do the job now. Come on, Mary. Come on.
They can hear me. The people at home can.
Yeah. And we got plenty of time. We got plenty of
There
time.
are loungers waiting for you.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel it's extremely hard for someone who is so embedded in their thoughts about politics and so forth. And I know that many of us are in that spot. To know how to look honestly at someone else's belief. We have good friends that are diehard politically different than we. We love them. But we don't talk about it much. But there is no way that we would ever be able to influence them to believe differently. And I think that's a very hard thing. I think you reaching out is a wonderful thing, but I think it will take more time that they don't want to do it. And the other thing about the abortion thing is that for years, I have had conversations, particularly with my sister and so forth. And I said, when you can show me a family or a woman or a man or whatever to take an unwanted child, then I might be able to talk to you more about abortion. But I don't see any of the people that are strongly against abortion taking these children that don't have a home. I mean, I've not met one yet.
We're supporting the mother so the baby can stay with the mother.
Right. Right. Yeah. Gio.
This is Gio.
Lay it on us, buddy.
I highly recommend a book called Relinquished. It's about mothers that are encouraged to give up their children for adoption as opposed to any other route. And it's a gamed system that, because there aren't enough children for those that want them. Of course, what they want goes back to that nuclear family that we've built that one dream around, rather than realizing that people are people and people make mistakes, and that Norman Rockwell family is not going to exist, not commonly anyway. But it talks about the mothers, and it gives a whole lot of facts about there are very, very few women who give up their child because that's what they want to do. It's the way they were influenced, the lack of support that they have if they have the child. They tend to be reluctantly forced into this decision. So that's enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Gio. Come on, Jane.
I think one of the biggest problems we have right now that's underlying a lot of the terrible things that are going on is the inability to communicate. And the reason for that is we no longer have a common set of facts.
Right.
Because news stations are telling people different things are true, or else they're just not telling one half of the story. And along with that, I was thinking this the other day, that one of the reasons Martin Luther King was so successful with the civil rights movement, as far as it has gotten, was because there was a common language. He was a minister and speaking like a minister, using biblical examples and everything, and white Christians knew that, understood that language, and it got them to question their own actions and the actions and what was going on with the system. But there is no common language now, not so much because churches are disappearing, but because there are not the common facts, and people honestly cannot discuss these matters. And that really troubles me, because I wonder how we're going to work through this.
It's troubling for sure. Thank you, Jane. And sorry about your son and daughter-in-law. I know that's tough.
I gotta say one, there are common facts. There are facts. And then there are lies. And it's the power behind the lies. It's what people choose to believe because it's convenient for what moves their life in their comfort zone. The holding on to power, the being able to say the reason that they suffer is because of what they do, as opposed to because of the system. It's the convenience that they hold on to in terms of rationalizing why they're going to vote for this side over here, why they're going to believe that that side over there is going to bring them to the right place, is going to bring all of us to the right place. That power structure, that here's how it's been, here's what's worked so well, here's that beautiful Rockwell nuclear family, here's Rockwell's America. Here's the convenience that keeps that in place. And that's why they're going to hold on to that, because it's convenient for them, keeps them in that place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And also, I just got to say about the whole abortion thing. Certainly, there are quite a few abortions because of unwanted pregnancies, but there are a ton of abortions because of health care.
Mm-hmm.
And those are every bit, even probably more important, because it is the health care, it's the health of the woman that needs to be protected. So.
I think, well, I'm not going to say that. But I will say that many of you will remember that when Donald Trump was president, he visited a graveyard in France where veterans of World War I were buried, and he called them losers. It's a matter of record. It's on videotape. So in 2020, I was working the polls for the Democratic Party, standing next to a couple of guys who were supporting President Trump. And I had a wonderful time with them. We had a lot of shared humanity. But this guy came walking up and he confronted these two Trump supporters. He said, "Did you not hear him say that those men in those graves were losers. And they said, you're watching the wrong news.
Yeah.
Facts. Yeah. Okay, Sandy, thank you.
Thank you. And now with this daunting task before her, Teresa has some poems that she has also some music for to pull it all together.
Since what we choose is what we are, and what we love we yet shall be. The goal may ever shine afar, the will to win it makes us free. Let those who live in every land declare that fear and war are done. Joined by the labor of their hands, in love and understanding. Ours be the poems of all times, of things of loveliness and worth. All hearts, all ages, and all songs. One life, one beauty on the
That was just
It's your idea.
We've heard today a whole lot of reasons for why this fellowship is important to all of us. The contributions we make today allow us to sustain and grow our congregation and to reach out to our community, both nearby and in the larger world. Your giving affirms our commitment to each other and to the community. And may I urge the viewers at home to switch briefly to the main page of our website and just hit the donate button to join in spirit with the people here in the room today. With grateful hearts, we receive these gifts. May they encourage us to live lives of integrity, compassion, and peace. We're also grateful to all the people who make possible our Sunday services, all our various community activities, and presenting us to the outside world via newsletter, and YouTube. And that includes everyone who cheers us on by being in these seats here today, or in their even more comfortable ones at home. Please take a look at the announcements in your order of service. Let me start with an apology. I hope if anyone attended the dog fence build yesterday, it was a roaring success, but it shouldn't have appeared in your order of service today. I can't imagine how that happened. The social suppers are a wonderful way to kind of, as one group of professionals might call it, process the service and whatever was said in here today, or just talk about stuff. Have we chosen?
We're gonna go to the Fusion Bowl in Cornelius.
The Fusion Bowl in Cornelius. Okay, great.
Let me talk about the movie for a second.
Okay,
I'll do it up there.
yeah,
because,
come on.
The movie's listed in here. It's called Thelma. And I'm recommending it. It's got 99 Rotten Tomatoes, which is the highest score you can get in a movie. And it's about an elderly woman, like 90 years old. The actress is 93 or 94, I don't know, who gets a phone call from her grandchild saying, I'm in jail or I'm somewhere and I need money. We're all likely to get that phone call. It's not real, it's a scam. And I think it would be a good learning movie for us. Of course, she goes on a rampage to get her money back, I think. So it should be fun too, but I think we can learn something.
It's not Thelma and Louise, clearly. And Tracy, who is 50% of the postcarding team with You the Vote, the other 50% is Reverend Pat, is going to talk about the postcard project. Come right up here to the microphone, Miss Tracy.
The reason you're hearing over and over again about this postcard campaign is that I have to have firm numbers of how many addresses we will need by August 1st, and we don't meet in July. So I'm going to start calling people up individually and asking. But the project is pretty easy. You'll have printed postcards, and then you receive labels that have the address, and another label that will have some of the printed message. And there will be some text provided to be handwritten, just to add to give a little bit of a personal touch to it, but it's not a whole lot of writing, and you don't have to sit and actually do all the addresses. We did do 1,200 the last round of this. Last time they went to voters in Cabarrus County, and this time the Center for Common Grounds is who we're partnered with for it, and they are going to be contacting leaders in people of color, unlikely vote or irregular voters. And so we're going to be reaching out to those people this year in hopes of increasing their participation now that we've had a lot of discussions in this 501(c) non-partisan meeting of some of the dangers of if the vote isn't delivered. So if you can be in touch with me about how many you'd like to do, I'm going to have them in packs of 25. I think just to help my keeping track, but opportunities are available.
Operators are standing by. Are there any announcements I should have made or?
Our team for the walk has now raised $584. So that's the Joy International's website, which is joy.org. And if anybody wants more information about how to do that, just see me after the service.
Our closing song will send us out into the world all fired up with enlightenment optimism. It's number 121, will build the land.
So we do two verses. We do two verses, Teresa. Two verses. That song goes on.
Please be seated for our closing words.
Our closing words come from President Lyndon Baines Johnson. He delivered these remarks on July 2nd, 1964, after signing the Civil Rights Bill. Those who founded our country knew that freedom would be secure only if each generation fought to renew and enlarge its meaning. Americans of every race and color have died in battle to protect our freedom. Americans of every race and color have worked to build a nation of widening opportunities. Now our generation of Americans has been called on to continue the unending search for justice within our own borders.
We close our services by extinguishing the light in the chalice and saying together the words in your order of service. Please stand as you can and take the hands of the people next to you. After the chalice is extinguished, with Teresa's help, we will sing the song that typically scoots our children off to their classroom, Go Now in Peace. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These in our hearts.
Go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
Well, yeah, I do. I know.